following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Degraw's Yankees. Degraw's New York Yankees. The man himself is here, and he will introduce a special guest. Jack Degraw. Have a great show.
How are you, Ralph? It is my pleasure to introduce, a great baseball mind. He knows everything about sports. Is Alan Blumkin. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jack.
Well, Alan, let's start with, what was the first Yankee game you went to? I'm just interested.
Okay, my parents, who had no interest in baseball, took me and my brother to Yankee Stadium for the first time on September 12th, 1953. And this is so long ago. They were playing Detroit. This is so long ago that Ray Boone was the third baseman for the Tigers. And the Yankees won the game, got 7 runs in the 7th inning, helped by a Mickey Mantle home run off Billy Heft that went into the center field bleachers. They won the game 13-4, and that was the first time I ever saw a green baseball field, because in those days there were no color TVs.
Well, did you attend any World Series games that year?
No, I'm 8. Well, I'm going to go by myself.
Oh. No, I figured maybe.
The first
no, I figured maybe your parents.
No, my parents had no interest in it at all. My mother developed some interest later on when she saw how passionate I was for it. But my father never really cared, and I got interested in through the cards, and specifically 51 Thompson, Bowman, Yogi Berra. I wanted to know who he was. I found out. He still is my all-time favorite player.
Yeah, I know, Alan. I visited Yogi's museum down in Montclair, and I got a chance to see Yogi down here in spring training. And the first game I went to, August 8th, 1964, was Old Timers Day, and Yogi was the manager. So, do you have any special memories of Yogi?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, just wanted to let you know that I was there August 12th, 1964, when Mel Stottlemyre made his debut, and Mantle hit one into the center field bleachers over that black thing in center field off a pitcher named Ray Herbert. But Yogi, of course, I followed Yogi all the time, and my favorite moment of his is when he hit the 2 home runs off of Don Newcomb, in the first 3 innings of the 7th game of 1956.
Yeah, that was Game 7, and what I remember is Johnny Cooks was the winning pitcher, and he was from my hometown. Wow.
Because Yogi had a home run off, another home run off Newcomb in the second game, a grand slammer in the second inning of the second game, but they wound up losing that game 13-8. And then after that game, they got 5 straight complete game wins, well, except for Turley in the 6th game, losing 1-0 in 10 innings. Ford, Tom Sturtevant, Lawson, of course, in the perfect game. Turley lost 1-0 in 10 innings to Clem Labine in Game 6, and Cooks in Game 7.
Now
that'll never be repeated.
No, that's for sure, Alan.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. In Game 2, didn't Don Larson pitch in that game?
Yeah, he wound up getting clubbed in that game. So for me, the MVP in the World Series that year was Yogi, but of course, since Larson pitched the perfect game, they gave him the trophy.
Did you have any? Go ahead.
I still get chills every time I see a film or a tape of Yogi swinging.
Yeah, he was a bad ball hitter, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he had a lot of foul home runs in the old place. Oh yeah, his philosophy was if I see it, I can hit it.
Well, he certainly did that a lot.
Yeah, and at one time Jeter was swinging at bad pitches and not doing well. And he says, Jeter comes over to Yogi, and I think this may have been at spring training. And he said to Yogi, you swung at bad pitches. And Yogi said, yeah, but I hit them. I also use his quotes any time I can.
Well, there's a lot of sense to Yogi.
I know that, yeah.
People can learn a lot from Yogi.
Yeah, I mean, there was one time I was visiting a friend up in Connecticut, and I had been there before, but I never drove there before, and I had to ask, and I forgot exactly where it was, so I knew it was near a shopping center. This is in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. So I got in there, and I made the wrong turn getting out of the shopping center, and I realized halfway down the block that was a wrong turn. So I said, I followed Yogi's instructions. If it's not that way, it's the other way. I got there.
Alan, could you tell me about Gil McDougall? I think he was one of the
Gil McDougall came up as a rookie in 1951. And in 1951, the Yankees, for the 1 year only, switched spring training sites with the Giants. The Yankees went out to Arizona, and the Giants took over in Florida. And Casey ran an instructional camp where they brought all the prospects up for the special instructional camp before spring training started. And McDougall was one of them. McDougall had a big year in the 1950 in Beaumont, Texas, in the Texas League, which was AA at that time. And McDougall made the team out of spring training, and he had a very strange batting stance, but he hit well enough for the first 3 seasons that he was there. Stengel loved him because he was versatile. He could play shortstop, second base, and third base. When they brought him up, he played third base without any loss of effectiveness. And he had a bad year in 54. He had 259, and Stengel called him in before the next season. Says, you get rid of that stance. Stengel, as he always wanted to do, used a few adjectives. And says, if you don't do it here, you'll be doing it in Kansas City, because Kansas City, this is the year before the A's moved to Kansas City. So he changed his stance a little bit, and when he was moved to shortstop in 1956 after Rizzuto declined, that was Rizzuto's last season, but he had been in decline for a couple of years. He started to hit, and he hit .311 in 1956. In 57, of course, he started off with a bang, and then he hit the line drive in May 1957 that hit Herb Score in the eye. And McDougall was quoted that all the enthusiasm went out of the game for him after that, and he never was the same ball player. That incident affected him almost as much as it affected the Herb Score. So he became a utility infielder, and his last year was 1960, and he was on third base running for Dale Long when he scored the run at the top of the ninth inning in Game 7 of the 1960 World Series to tie the game up. And after 1960, I think it was the Angels offered him a contract because they were an expansion team, and Gil decided that he didn't want to uproot his family and he had business here, and to go to either the New Senators or the Angels. So he felt that he was going to be put up in the expansion draft, so he retired. And they coached baseball at Fordham University for quite a while. But he was a very solid. Excuse me?
No, you mentioned the 1960 World Series. Now, I'd like to ask you a few things because I remember talking to Bobby Shantz. Now, there was a point earlier in the game, Shantz was telling me, I don't know if you remember, he was up with the bases loaded, and he hit a line drive somewhere, and I think Clemente made a nice catch. Do you have any knowledge of that?
No, I can look that up because I was a freshman at Pitt, University of Pittsburgh that year, and a friend of mine, I got into Forbes Field in the top of the ninth of Game 7. The university was a couple of blocks away, and we snuck over there. We were 17 years old. What do we know? I had a transistor radio and saw the Yankees tied up, and I saw Mazeroski's home run. But the thing is, I've spoken to a number of people who were involved in that game. I spoke to Degraw. I did a full interview with him. This is in 1985, and he was the man on deck when he was coming out to be on deck when Mazeroski hit the home run. And Groth said that the hardest at bat he ever had in his whole career was the bat against Shantz in the eighth inning of that game. And he wound up getting a single. Groth had been out for most of September with a broken wrist. Then I spoke to Johnny Blanchard at a card show in 1987 out by Kennedy Airport here, and this was before the show started, and he was talking about to a few people. So I asked him about the ninth inning of that game, and Coates, the eighth inning, sorry. And he hated Coates. And Blanchard turned red. This is 27 years after the game. And he said that everybody knew that Hal Smith was a dead fastball hitter because he had played in the American League the previous 5 years with the Orioles and the A's. And and Blanchard's catching. Howard was injured and Yogi was out in left field. So Blanchard started signaling Coates to throw breaking stuff to Hal Smith. And Coates kept shaking him off. So finally he goes out there and says, what do you want to throw? He says, I want to throw a fastball. He says, and Blanchard said, don't you know this guy's a dead fastball hitter? He says, I'll get it past him. Well, he didn't quite get it past him. And after Terry, Ralph Terry, who Ralph and I did a podcast with last fall, gave up the home run to Mazeroski in the clubhouse. Coates went over to him and said, thanks for getting me off the hook. In fact, the team hated, Blanchard told me that the team hated Coates so much that they set up a fight between him and Elston Howard because Coates was not a fan of black people, and Howard beat the hell out of him. I remember when they traded Coates to Washington for Steve Hamilton. I said, that's the first time I ever used the term addition by subtraction. And Terry said to us that when he did discuss this, which surprised me, he said he was trying to throw fastballs into areas where Mazeroski couldn't hit. He just made a bad pitch. He's lived with it all these years.
There was an incident earlier in this game. I think a lot of people forget that Shantz was pitching, and then they brought in Coates, and didn't he botch up a bunt play?
No. What happened with Shantz had pitched 5 scoreless innings, and he probably, if that ground ball didn't hit Kubek in the throat, he probably would have gone longer. But after Groth got the hit off Shantz, they brought in Coates to face Clemente. And Coates Clemente hit a topper that went between the first base and the pitcher. Skowron came off the field, off the first base to fielded the ball, turned to first base to throw the ball. Coates wasn't there.
Oh, boy.
And that kept the inning alive.
Yeah, and Chance was a Gold Glove fielder forever.
I've spoken to him because a friend of mine in Philadelphia is very close to Chance. I've spoken with him a couple of times.
Yeah,
He's still around. He's 92 now, 93 now.
Yeah, he's a real nice guy. Could you talk about a little bit like Allie Reynolds, Vic Raschi, and Eddie Lopat?
Okay. There's a book that came out on them a couple of years ago by a guy named Sal Gittleman, which is very good. Even taught me a few things. Well, Raschi was the only one of the three that came up through the Yankee system. Reynolds they had gotten from Cleveland for Joe Gordon after 1946, and they traded pitchers named Bill White and Fred Bradley and a catcher named Aaron Robinson to the White Sox before 1948 to get Lopat. And Robinson turned out to be one of the most expensive backup catchers because the White Sox, after 48, sent him to Detroit for Billy Pierce, who was their big winner for a dozen years. But they used to use Reynolds. Stengel used to use Reynolds, and he would pitch these guys against the teams he felt, the big teams. Because when Whitey Ford came up in 1950 to join them, until late in the season, Whitey Ford was just pitching against Washington and the Browns and the Philadelphia A's. But Reynolds was very fast. Stengel also used to like to use him in relief. And Reynolds came over with a reputation of lacking guts because he couldn't complete games. He'd fold up after the seventh inning. But he proved that to be a myth, and after his first year with the Yankees, when they had a relief pitcher named Joe Page who would finish for him, Reynolds would go complete games. And in 1951, he pitched the 2 no-hitters, and then he won 20 games in 1952 and led the American League in ERA. He got injured when the Yankees had a bus accident in 1953 going from New York to Philadelphia. The bus crashed into an overpass, and he hurt his back. So in 1954, he was 13-4, usually used in relief, and he retired. Raschi came up for the first time in 1946, came up for good in 1947, won 21 games, 3 seasons in a row from 49 to 51, and he was very mean. Then nobody talked to Raschi before a game. There's an incident that when Yogi, in 1949, 1950, where he was still feeling his oats as a catcher, Stengel set them out to talk to Raschi, and Yogi gets halfway out there. Raschi takes a look at him and says, "Not another step further." So Yogi is in no man's land for a few minutes. Then he goes out to the mound. Raschi says, "I told you not to come out here." And Yogi said to him, he said, "Your number ain't 37." But Raschi was very, very clutch. His ERA was higher than it should have been because he had a tendency when they were way ahead to let up a little bit. Now, what happened with Raschi, he got a bad knee. And in 52, he was 16-6, and the next year he was 13-6 in 53. And then after 1953, they were all holding out after winning 5 straight championships. So Weiss decided to make an example of somebody. He made an example of Raschi and sold him to the St. Louis Cardinals a couple of weeks before the season started. Raschi fell off. He gave up Henry Aaron's first home run. It was 8-9, and it went to the Kansas City A's, where he finished. He also, when he was at the Kansas City A's, gave up the first home run to Whitey Ford, who had 3 in his career. Okay. And Raschi retired. Lopat, as I mentioned before, they got him from the White Sox, and he fit right in because Raschi and Reynolds were both fastballers. Lopat was known as the junk man. So he threw a lot of junk, and for some reason, he owned the Indians.
Okay.
Yeah, with the free swingers, and there's a story. There's an interview with him in Donald Heineck's first oral history called World Series Memories, and Lopat describes a incident in Cleveland where he was rooming with Johnny Sain, and they went out to the stadium in Cleveland because the hotel was so hot there was no air conditioning. And he watches one of the left-handers on Cleveland mimicking him, throwing old junk, and the batters, hitters are, going to the junk. So Barrett, he goes into the clubhouse and tells Barrett and Stengel about this. So he said the first 4 innings he threw nothing but fastballs. Wow. And in the fifth inning, when they went back to the way they swung normally, he went back to the junk and beat them. And he won 21 games in 1951. That was the first and only time. He had a sore arm for part of 1952. When he was 10-5. In 1953, he was 16-4, which led the league in American League in percentage, and he led the league in ERA. He was good as a spot star in 1954. And 55 was when he fell off completely. They sold him to the Orioles, and he finished his major league career with the Orioles. He did go to Richmond, which was the Yankee farm team in 1956 in the International League. And he was a player manager there, and he won 11 games. And then, of course, he did have the unfortunate job of managing the Kansas City A's for Charlie Finley for 2 years in the mid-'60s. But if you look at their records, the three of them, their records as Yankees, they were all 60, 70 games over 500. And, they were all terrific for a limited time. Reynolds is the closest one to getting into Cooperstown, and he missed by one vote the year by the Veterans Committee the year they put Joe Gordon in, which is something I don't think was right, but I have no control over that. But these three were the anchors of the 5 straight World Championships from 1949 to 1953.
Well, I believe like Allie Reynolds was involved in 55, 60% of the wins. The 12 wins in the series when they won 5 in a row. Allie Reynolds was in the game.
He won 7, yeah. He won 7, but, it's a trivia question. Who's the only one? But the 1953 one is tainted because he came in the 8th inning of the final game with a 3-1 lead way before he pitched 7 innings of 1-run ball, and he gave up a 2-run home run to Carl Furillo in the 9th inning, which tied the game up, and then they won the game in the bottom of the 9th. So that win was a vulture. The rest of them were legitimate.
That's when Billy Martin got the winning hit, right?
Yeah, Billy Martin was something as a player. I mean, he was a 260 hitter, but in the World Series, he turned it up 5 notches, and he made that incredible catch, which saved the 1952 World Series when Jackie Robinson hit the pop-up and Joe Collins couldn't locate in the sun. And then in 53, he got 12 hits and 24 at-bats and was involved in almost every rally that they got. I mean, he outplayed Jackie Robinson in all 4 of the World Series that they played against each other.
Wow.
He was amazing as the bigger the game, the better he got. It's amazing.
How about Hank Bauer and Gene Woodling? Would you like to hear
I know you did a podcast on them a few weeks ago. Now, Woodling, they got him from the Pacific Coast League because when Stengel managed the Oakland team out there in 1948, Woodling was playing, I think, for the San Francisco Shields, and he won the batting title there. So he came to the Yankees. He recommended that they get Woodling. Weiss got him, and Woodling had 5 terrific years. He was known as Old Faithful. That nickname was given to him by Mel Allen. And, in contrast to Old Reliable, who was Tommy Henrik, Woodling, for some reason, was another one who tormented the Indians quite a bit. Now, in 1954, he had a very injury-riddled bad year. Okay, and Irv Noren, who was a 270 hitter, hit 319 and essentially replaced Woodling in the outfield that year. So when they made the trade to Baltimore after the season, where they got Larson and Turley, they sent Woodling to Baltimore. And Stengel, I was very surprised when I heard about that. And when Stengel said that was the one trade he regretted, was sending Woodling, because after 1954, Noren went back to, I think, 260, was gone after 1956, and Woodling had several good years left with the Indians and the Orioles. Yes, but he and Bauer, when they came up, Stengel would platoon them, because Woodling hit left-handed and Bauer hit right-handed. Now, Bauer was one who was hurt by the dimensions of the original Yankee Stadium, because he was a right-handed hitter whose power was to left center. Okay, DiMaggio had problems with that. Skowron had problems with that. Any right-handed power hitter would have trouble, if their power was to that area. But Stengel loved Bauer because Bauer was no nonsense, and he busted his backside every play, never let up, and he hit later in his career. He hit in 17 consecutive World Series games. He was stopped by Warren Spahn in the fourth game in 1958, who threw a 2-hit shutout. But in Game 3, which was in Yankee Stadium, they started Larson. They won the game 4-0. Bauer got 3 of the 4 hits and drove in all 4 of the runs.
Wow!
And he had his career numbers would have been much better if he played in a ballpark that was conducive to his abilities. But and they traded him to Kansas City after 1959 because he was 37 years old and really couldn't do it anymore. And he wanted to go home because that's where he lived. He lived in the suburb of Kansas City, and that's the trade where they got Roger Maris.
Yeah, Roger was my favorite player.
Yeah, Roger took over.
Go ahead,
He took over in right field, and he took over Bauer's number 9.
Wow. Now, what's your memories of the '61 Yankees, '62?
Oh,
do you have any?
It's funny because I went to 4 doubleheaders during the summer there. I must have been a jinx. I saw 4 of their 16 home losses that season, and I didn't see Maris at home. I did see Mantle hit a couple, but that year was just unbelievable. I mean, every game they were hammering teams. I think the addition of the Angels and the second version of the Senators helped because of the expansion. And there were more pitchers who were easier to hit. And but they just went after it like crazy. And everybody was rooting for Mantle to do it, to break the record. And most of the people I knew who were Yankee fans totally disregarded the Ford Frick edict about having to do it in 154 games, which I think was a very stupid decision.
Yeah.
Ford Frick was a ghostwriter for Babe Ruth.
I was just going to ask you that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, the next year when Maury Wills broke the Ty Cobb single stolen base record, and he broke it after in the extra games, there was nothing said about it. But Maris, I think one of the things that happened to Maris during that year, and it was, did you see the movie 61?
Yes, it was a very good movie.
And it was right that they didn't protect him, and he was not a type to handle the New York media very well. Because even when Mantle came up in 1951, this 19-year-old hick out of Oklahoma was supposed to replace a living legend in DiMaggio. And he couldn't do that for a number of years. Finally, he learned how to handle the media. And Maris lost hair. And I think that whole season took a big toll on him which possibly led to his smoking a lot and led to his premature passing. I really think the strain of that year really did him in, but he didn't hit the 60 home runs. They won 109 games. And I watched the World Series out in Pittsburgh because I was in college there, and everybody was stunned when they lost one game.
Yeah,
but
Joey G beat him.
Mantle came out with the with the blood coming through the uniform, and Whitey Ford, Stengel used to spot Whitey Ford to pitch against certain teams, and when Howe came in '61, every fourth day, and Whitey Ford won 25 games, lost 4 in that year, and he won the Cy Young Award. They got 60 home runs out of Berra, Blanchard, and Elston Howard combined. And I think they were really one of the driving factors that year was to erase the memory of 1960.
Yeah, that was a heartbreak.
God, I was such a fanatic during the 50s. I used to argue because I grew up in Queens, and when I went to school there, nobody was born in Queens that I went to school. Everybody was from either the Bronx or Brooklyn. I was from the Bronx, and we used to argue Yankees and Dodgers all the time, and I used to argue that Joe Collins was better than Gil Hodges, even though I knew that was nonsense. But no, we used to bet quarters and dimes, and I had to pay out a slew of quarters after 1955. I was pounding. I got home to see the last inning of Game 7 in that series. I was pounding the sofa. This is impossible. But, I got back in 1956, and then they beat the Braves in 1958 after losing to them in 1957.
Wow. Alan, I'd like to ask you something. Now, do you still collect baseball cards, or do you just collect the older cards?
No, I don't collect the baseball cards. And what happened was my mother got rid of them all. I had to get before I got the new ones, I had to get rid of the old ones. So I stopped collecting when I went to college. But I have the reprint sets from the early 50s.
Yeah, I had a lot of them, too.
I have all the reprints, which aren't worth very much, but I don't have them to sell them.
Yeah, they were beautiful cards, and the thing I used to enjoy would be writing to the old players. And 99% of them, they sent the autographs back. They were just really nice.
Oh wow,
people.
I never did that because I thought that I never thought that would result in anything like that.
Yeah, I still got about 1,500 autographs from all the old guys because they were good people and stuff. No, I remember buying the cards in the 60s, and they used to come out in sets, like 1 through 7.
Yeah.
March 1st, April, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. And I still got a box from 58. I mean, it's opened and everything when Mickey Mantle was on the cover. So I still kept that.
Well, somebody asked me if I had any 52 Mantles. I said, yeah, but they're all reprints. They're barely worth the cardboard they're printed on. But my brother who's 3.5 years younger than me, was a huge Mantle fan. In fact, I was told the only time he's cried in the last bunch of years was when Mantle passed. I was up with a group of people in Cooperstown, and the weekend Mickey passed, and I asked to see the video of his induction. Guess what? The first videos they have of inductions were when Frank Robinson and Henry Aaron went in 1982 when ESPN started televising them. All they had were audios. So I listened to Mantle and Whitey Ford. They got that one for me. And then I asked them to get Yogi, who was 2 years before. And Yogi was very somber, and he sounded like he couldn't wait to get off the platform there. Because the all-time Hall of Fame speech is Rizzuto.
Oh, that was fantastic.
It's on YouTube. I watch every time I need cheering up. I put that on.
Oh, I get a kick out of that.
Yeah.
When he said he was going to New Guinea and he was happy, he thought he'd meet a whole lot of Italians.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But the thing is, I went to card shows and I have a hardback copy of Dynasty, Peter Golenbach's book, where I have autographed all the principals of the 5-year dynasty, except for Jerry Coleman and Bob Cazava.
Okay.
I got them basically all at card shows.
Yeah, I remember when I lived up north in like the late 80s and early 90s, they used to do a lot of card shows. Yeah. I was in Atlantic City when they had the 61 Yankees there. So it was...
Mantle and Maris was still... Mantle was still all around?
Yeah, Mantle was still around, and, I think Mickey was charging $35 for his autograph. Yogi was $20, and the rest of the guys were like $5 and $10. So it's actually the promoters that do the charging, and they do the charging based on what they have to pay the player. One of my friends told me he was at a card show years ago, and the two of the guests were Mantle and Dick Stewart. And Mantle was getting paid a lot of money, for that back then. For what was a lot of money back then. And my friend told me Dick Stewart went to the promoter and said, "I want to be paid like Mantle." So the promoters told Dick Stewart to take a hike, which he did. But Alan, do you collect the yearbooks?
Yeah. Yeah, I have. I think I have all the Yankee yearbooks going back to 1950, except for the last few years. Because they used to have numbers in it. It turned into picture books.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I got the media guides now.
From the 50s too, or?
No, the first one they ever put out was 1955, and I have a few that were reprinted from that back then.
How about the World Series programs?
Yeah. Yeah, I really stopped several years into when they started making it generic. But
online, Alan, you can still get some of the ones from the 30s and the 40s, 50s for like $10, $12 to reprints. I have most of them also.
Yeah, I was at every postseason game at Yankee Stadium in 1976, 77, and 78.
Boy, that must have been a thrill when Reggie hit all those homers.
Oh yeah. In fact, they reconfigured it, which I didn't like, but they did that. And the seats in the upper deck where I was are very far narrow, but I never had an easier time getting out of that place than after the Reggie's 3 home run game. And 76 was freezing. And I was lucky I was able to get rid of the tickets I had for that. And that was 4 straight. And then 78, the first game, it was the third game when Nettles made all those plays behind Guidry.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful. Then halfway through the fourth game on Saturday, the weather turned. That was when Reggie took the ball in the hip. And they won that game in 10 innings. And the next day I had to go like I was going to a football game. And Jim Beattie, of all people, beat them.
Yeah, I remember that. Because the game on Saturday when Reggie took wasn't that a late starting game at 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can never depend on the time.
Yeah. Now, I remember the Jim Beattie game, too. What football game did you go see?
Football, I went to a couple of Giants games before they moved out, because after the early 60s, they were pretty bad. And I had 1979, 1980, I had Jets season tickets at Shea Stadium, and that cured me. I haven't been to a pro football game since. I used to live in the old Garden during the winter time with the basketball doubleheaders. We get seats in the mezzanine for $3.50, and me and my friend, we knew what rows to get, because if you got the first row, you're looking through the poles all the time. You got the top row, you can't see the scoreboard. So we knew what. We used to go to all of those, and a lot of college games too in those days. But
wow.
But the Knicks are beyond horrible right now. Yeah.
Alan, they're a disgrace. It's a disgrace.
I haven't been to a Knick game since 1995 when Reggie Miller threw the Pacers threw two 3-pointers inside 10 seconds and beat them. But I used to go when my alma mater Pitt was in the Big East. I used to go to the Big East tournament for the colleges there. But then they're in the ACC now.
Yeah, those college doubleheaders were great. I used to go to a couple of them.
Yeah.
I used to go see the Knicks. And I had season tickets, too, for the Jets in 79 and 80. So,
well, you see, my seats were all the way on the upper deck. They would have been great for baseball, but yeah.
We were in the upper deck in the end zone, like 3 rows from the top.
Yeah, so I was in the upper deck in the end zone, but I was just low enough not to be undercover.
Yeah, and it used to get cold.
And what really broke, two games broke me was one, but 1980. One was, I should realize, in 1979, because the first game they played Cleveland, and Gastineau got called for a personal foul on the last play of regulation time. They Browns kicked the field goal to tie it up and beat them in the overtime. Should really realize right then and there. But what really broke me was there was a game, I think it was against New England, when several rows below me, these guys felt it would be fun to throw beer into the lower part of the section. And the people that got hit with the beer did not particularly like it, and they came up. And everybody was pointing to the ones who threw it because they didn't want to get into a brawl. But a brawl happened. One of the guys who threw it almost had his face taken off.
Oh, God.
And then the last game of the season, that was the weekend that John Lennon was killed.
Yeah.
They're playing New Orleans, who comes in 0-14.
Yep.
And I told him what the guy I had the tickets with. I said, if they lose this one, that's it. And they did.
Yep, because, Alan, you mentioned the Cleveland Jet game. I remember the Browns won that 25-22, and I remember the Saints Jet game. Richard Todd scored a touchdown. They were ahead 20-14, and the Saints come down and scored and beat the Jets 21-20.
Yeah. I
remember the game well. And it was flurrying out at the end.
Yeah, it was. They came in 0-14.
Yeah.
The Jets' whole history since that Super Bowl has been one of ineptitude. I'm amazed that people even show up there.
Yeah, I know the first 9 times I went to see them, they lost.
Yeah, I was watching. I put on the Knicks. I refused to watch the Knicks, but I put one on for a couple of seconds when they played, I think, an afternoon game with Sacramento a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I put it on, and above the first tier of seats, they actually showed there, and there's nobody there. So I don't know how many people actually show up for their games. But my alma mater didn't have a good year in basketball this year. And I said, I turned one of the games off, and somebody asked me why, and I said, if I want to see bad basketball, I'll watch the Knicks.
Yeah,
so I have very limited interest in this year's NCAA.
Well, me too, Alan. It's just a shame. I mean, if the Knicks had even a competitive team, they could own that city. Because New York loves basketball. They would go insane over that.
Yeah, because they've been terrible ever since Dolan took over the team, and the Ewing team ended their run. They've been absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad I'm in Florida.
Yeah, where in Florida are you?
I'm in the Tampa area. I'm probably like 5 miles from the Yankee complex. And this afternoon for the Yankees, CC Sabathia is going to pitch a game. So my buddy and me are going to go down there in a little while. So
yeah, I know the weather's been pretty bad down there this week. It's been raining.
Well, it's beautiful out today. It's like 70 degrees.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of rain this year, which is unusual. Rain, and it's been chilly.
Yeah, I think that they have. If their pitching doesn't wind up on the disabled list, that they have a shot, because I think the Red Sox pitching staff, aside from Sale, is less than great. Now, as long as they stay healthy, and this whole business, one thing I can't understand is why they're so in love with Greg Bird. Just because he is left-handed? The guy's always hurt. He's done nothing since 2015. And Voigt showed he can play at the major league level.
Yeah, and they got him from the Cardinals, and he was great last year. Well, I guess Bird's playing well in spring training. He always does. He's going to left field a little bit more. But I think that the thing, Alan, I mean, they got such a strong team and they'll score runs. And in the American League, you only have 4 or 5 good teams. You got a lot of bad teams in baseball. I mean, you got really a lot of teams that, is going to lose 95, 100 games. And
we had 3 last year that lost 100. Yeah, and the one thing problem they had last year was beating the Orioles, who were one of the worst teams I've ever seen.
Yeah, I know
problems
they were down
with them
here
last year.
Oh, it's awful. I mean, they were down here last week, and I don't even recognize the players on the team anymore.
Well, they all leave. Machado left, Jones left.
Yeah, I mean,
and their starting pitching is the ace there is this Bundy, and they signed Andrew Kashner for 2 years before last season. I said, they're crazy. This guy can't win anywhere. He was terrible. Wherever he was terrible. And they gave him $16 million for 2 years. He was terrible there. But they came very close. I like to follow bad teams, really bad teams. And they came close to joining if they didn't win the last game, they would have joined at the 70 games under 500 club.
Yeah. They were almost as bad as the 62 Mets.
Or the 2003 Tigers, who a lot of people forget, won 43 games. Yeah.
Wow. It's I don't know. What do you think, Al? You think there's going to be a strike in a couple of years?
Oh, I don't know. I think they're making too much money. They really are.
Yeah.
I mean, you look, you got $500,000 just for making a team, and even the bums that can't walk are getting $3-4 million a year.
Yeah, that's the thing. There was
they're making too much. They're making too much money. There's too much money involved. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that's why there wasn't a strike in 2002, because what happened in '94. Because I was up in Cooperstown in '95, for the weekend that Mantle passed, and you go into the museum and they list all the World Series winners and everything. In 1994, they had none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's when that baseball history come out, that on PBS.
Yeah.
I think it started mid-September, and we have a strike. I mean, what a disgrace that was.
Yeah. What happened with that is I bought blank tapes, and I taped all of that instead of paying $150 or whatever PBS was charging for that. But one of the things that came up Tuesday night, the podcast I do with Ralph and company on Tuesday night, was Hal Bach with all these weather change, these rule changes that they're proposing. I made a comment which some of them didn't like. But they said, well, the All-Star game. I said, I don't give a damn what they do in the All-Star game. They can experiment all they want in the All-Star game, because I haven't watched one since the year they came back from the strike in 1981. I don't care anymore.
I don't either.
It used to be a very big deal for me.
Oh, I used to watch
the one
it too.
in '77 at Yankee Stadium. It used to be because you had players. You can't imagine Willie Mays playing in the American League or Mantle playing in the National League. It was just unfathomable. And now they all switch leagues. The pitchers all pitch an inning. Well, you can see that in any regular season game. There's nothing special about it anymore.
Yeah, I don't follow the All-Star game either. Well, Alan, you want to cut a little short?
All right. I know you have to get going.
Yeah, my friend is blowing the horn out here. We're going out to see
fine.
CC.
Okay, it was a pleasure. I want to thank you for the opportunity, and hope you found out that I know a little bit.
Well, you know a lot, Alan. Alan, you come on anytime. It was a pleasure to get to know you.
You message me, and I'll be on. Okay?
Anytime, Alan.
Thank you so much.
You take care of yourself.
You too.
And
bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
This is Degraw's Yankees, and I hope you enjoyed the show, and see you next week. Bye-bye now. Thanks for listening.
The proceeding was a comfortably zoned radio network production. Thank you for listening.